and welcome to this episode of H2O Stream. My name is Darby and I am an editor at H2O Global News. Today I'm really honoured to introduce you to Dennis, the Technical Director at Infiltrator Water Technologies. So Dennis, thanks for joining me today. Could you please tell us a bit more about Infiltrator Water Technologies and your role at the company?
Thanks, Darby, for having me here today. Yes, I sure can. First, a little bit about Infiltrator. Well, we are a manufacturer of products for the decentralized wastewater industry. And with that, we produce plastics products, and we are now the largest recycler in North America. So we're very proud of that. So we are a green company by default, just with our recycling, but not only with that, just the environment in which we're in. We're going to take water from the environment locally, let's say a well, and we're going to consume it in the household or a business. It's going to be deposited out to the treatment system and then thereby go back into the soil, thus completing the water cycle locally and recharge aquifers. So it's decentralized systems are green, and we're happy to be a green company because of that. Some of the other things, if you were a venture capitalist looking at Infiltrator, you'd say, wow, you're a plastics manufacturer. And yes, we are, but we happen to be in what we call the wastewater space. So within that space, I'm on what I call the applied side of the business. Being an engineer, a civil environmental engineer, I'm professionally registered in the US here to do that. So, I've been affectionately referred to as what they call the dirt and poop engineer with wastewater treatment systems. So that's pretty funny and interesting. So at Infiltrator, I manage the technical services department, which is a department that does a lot of things. We'll work with consulting engineers, designing large systems. They could be commercial systems, they could be community systems. We'll also work with local counties on just single family systems. We also get involved a lot with research and development, where we'll actually test products with real wastewater and run through the process and try and optimize the system. I do hold a couple of patents. And what else can I say? Overall, I'd say the department really, supports the business, the technical side. We get lots of calls. We have an 800 number, calls coming in all day, or as I mentioned earlier, engineers sending in plans for us to review or assist on the design.
That's great. And it's people like yourself that work for dedicated companies that not only provide water, but also responsible for protecting our planet. Correct,
yes.
Yeah. So during your time and knowledge gained at Infiltrator Water, can you tell me what exactly are decentralized wastewater treatment systems, and what are some of their key benefits over, let's say, a centralized system?
Sure, yes. So decentralized systems play a large role in really every country's infrastructure. They provide effective treatment to protect public health and the environment, and they serve those areas where sanitary sewers can't reach to, provide that service. And it's a very important service. As you mentioned, we all carry a large burden in our industry of protecting public health. And it's one of those things, it goes unnoticed, right? It's unknown, which is good, because when there's a problem, then all of a sudden things get noticed. But when one traditionally thinks of decentralized systems, to give you a broader perspective of decentralized systems, people tend to think of the small single family system, which I'm going to try and share with you here on the screen. Next one here. There it is. Okay. So here we have a traditional, conventional, decentralized systems, what people normally think. So you have the home, which is the generation source of the wastewater, and then it flows out to what we call a primary tank, a septic tank, which will remove all the solids and provide a a primary treated effluent that goes out to what we call a drain field, a leach field, a soak away. It's really known as different things in different countries. But the most important part of this system is that area, the region below the system, the soil in this area here. So the soil is just a very, very effective treatment mechanism for wastewater. For example, if you were to ask me, you would say, hey, Dennis, what's needed for wastewater treatment? Most wastewater treatment engineers would tell you, two things. First of all, we need oxygen and we need surface area. So with soil that's readily available, the air gets, oxygen gets diffused down through the soil from the atmosphere. And of course, the soil particles has a tremendous amount of surface area. So, I like to tell people the answer for wastewater treatment is right under our feet.
That's great. That's really interesting, for our community to hear. And what is Infiltrator Water currently doing to promote the decentralization of wastewater treatment plants?
Well, so what we do a lot of is we promote decentralized systems. And so in promoting those systems, we do it in a number of ways. And it's not done in an infiltrator promotional, it's not done in a product promotional way. It's really done in terms of education. So, given like this type of format or being in person, giving presentations is really the effective means of communicating. So we may find new research that's been conducted, and then what we do is called technology transfer. So we'll present. For example, I was just requested to go to what's called the TIHA, the Texas Environmental Health Association's annual meeting, and give a full day of presentations, 8 hours. So 8 one-hour presentations on the fundamentals of wastewater treatment. So it'll cover real general topics of, let's say, managed aquifer recharge. That's where we're putting the water back into the ground. We'll talk about wastewater treatment in general and the benefits of it and how it protects public health. And so topics like that. So that way we really tend to promote the industry of decentralized systems.
Now, issues such as urbanization and climate change, they're not hot off the press news. We know climate change was recorded in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and urbanization has increased rapidly through the 19th century until now. But still there are issues we are all currently facing today. So can you tell us how will decentralized systems help us tackle challenges such as climate change, urbanization, and even aging infrastructure?
Yes, sure. That's a great question. So when I showed you the image of the decentralized system, what is really fantastic about it is it's so eloquent in its simplicity. By that, I mean, there's no power, no pumps, no aeration. It's just simple gravity and Mother Nature doing its job. And so all the beneficial bacteria are there and available. We just need to supply them with the wastewater. And we need to think of wastewater differently. It's a resource. So it's a resource. It's really a food source for the microbes that are just sitting there waiting to be fed, and they will treat our waste very effectively. And that's all the same principles, really, that are used on the large scale with wastewater treatment plants. If you think of wastewater treatment plants, what are they doing when you drive by and you see them on the highway? They're bubbling in air, lots of energy, that type of thing. And so they're making conditions just right for those microbes to do their job. And they do a very effective job. And there's different ways to tweak and optimize those systems to allow for that. So that's one way in which decentralized can help is very low carbon footprint with their systems. We're not, extracting water. A centralized system is going to extract water from far away. It's going to pump it to a water treatment plant to treat it, and then it's going to go out on the grid and be consumed by people. And then it's going to drain down through the vast network of piping to the wastewater treatment plant. All the while being pumped and lots of energy use, and then go to the treatment plant and require lots of energy there to provide the amount of treatment, and then displace that water somewhere further out of the ecosystem. So the decentralized mode really, it saves on carbon footprint, saves on energy, and then keeps that water locally available for the ecosystems, which is a big benefit.
This is amazing news to my ears, Dennis, because I am a massive environmental and ocean advocate. So this is great. How can we accelerate the uptake of this technology going forward?
I guess there's many factors there. We certainly like to play a role, as I had mentioned, by providing, education and public awareness is really the key. So, one thing we could do as far as education, myself being an engineer, a wastewater guy, went to traditional civil engineering university. Decentralized is really not in the core curriculum of these wastewater courses for just a typical engineer going through the university system. So certainly there to train the engineers would be great, and of course me being an engineer, I'm biased to that. But there's other factors as well. There's regulatory. Now regulatory historically is just very slow to change. The whole process of approvals and updating rules and regulations can be a slow, laborious process. So that could certainly, be improved because, honestly, there's all this great technological advancements, new technologies for treatment and everything else that are readily available. So to be able to incorporate that would be, in a much faster time frame would be a great thing. And then, of course, there's the all important, in the U.S. we say the all important dollar, right? So there's the funding.
Yeah.
So historically,
it does still play a big part in
it really does
message across to these companies and to the community and the public.
Right. So the funding, in most countries, over 95% of the funding is going to go to those centralized treatment plants, which, yes, they do really need the money because all their pipes are breaking, leaking, cracking, letting water in, what's called I&I inflow and infiltration, causing sanitary sewer overflows, combined sewer overflows, which discharge untreated waste directly to the environment, which really is not a good thing at all. So anyway, in many countries, for example, in the US, 25% of the population is served by decentralized systems. However, 95% of the funding goes to the centralized model or systems. So, once the funding comes around and is more proportionally appropriate, certainly that would be a big boon to decentralized systems.
Yeah. And lastly, for our listeners, Dennis, do you have any other thoughts that you wish to share with our community here at H2O?
Yes, I may have mentioned earlier, we all have roles to play in this, I'll call it the decentralized wastewater space. There's the regulator, there's the designer, there's the engineer, designer engineer, and also that the numerous contractors or installers that are out there. They really carry a large burden, which is, of course, to protect public health and the environment. So with that, I'm always reminded of a metaphor, and that's the old three-legged stool. Have you heard that one? Where we as an industry, you're supported by those three, let's say those three tiers of professionals. Let's say we have the engineer, we have the regulations and the regulators, and we have that installer base of contractors. And if they are not all in sync, and that stool then fall over.
Yeah.
Correct. But then I asked a further question. Okay, what is the most limiting factor of those three groups of professionals that are in the association, in the business, in the industry? And if I were to ask a engineer or a contractor, what's the limiting factor? They'd pull their hair out and say, man, these rules and regulators, they're just driving me crazy, right? I got to resubmit plans, I got to take forever to get approval, to get a permit, and this kind of thing. And so regulators, I think, unfairly take the burden of, I won't say blame, but just of criticism, right? But then I like to tell everybody, I say, listen, have you ever been to, one of the third world countries? Okay, yes, you're on a resort, everything's fine. Have you ever been off the resort? Have you went to the villages? Because fortunately for me, I've been involved with a lot of international projects where I'm going to visit schools or orphanages, trying to get them proper sanitary wastewater treatment. And so it's not the resort at all. It's real world. And you go to those places and there's sewage on the ground, there's sewage in the ditch, and it's on the surface, and it's really a shame. And so before I visit these countries, I always study their rules and regulations, and they all have rules and regulations. The problem is they don't have the enforcement.
Yeah, I've seen it happening in Asia a lot.
Yes, you'll see it everywhere. So that is the true importance, of that three-legged stool. Really, the burden relies upon those rules and regulation as our foundation. Because if we don't have rules and regulations and we don't have enforcement, then all of a sudden we don't have anything and we'll just have sewage on the streets. So, I like to say to people, don't criticize, the regulators. They have a big burden and a big job to do. We need to somehow help them to achieve their goals. Because really, in alignment, we all have the same goals, and the same goal is whether you're a manufacturer such as myself, a designer, engineer, a regulator, or even the contractor, or the people who own these systems. The goal is, we don't want any kids getting sick anywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, thanks, Dennis. I really appreciate your time today, and I think it's very important that we create water stability, especially with those localized communities that you've mentioned. We're very excited about what's to come and see what Infiltrator Water does next in terms of digital water technology.
Hi, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me and for your time.